बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
शुरू अल्लाह का नाम लेकर जो बड़ा मेहरबान निहायत रहम वाला है।
इन्ना अअतैनाकल कौसर।
ए नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम, हमने तुमको कौसर यानी बहुत ज्यादा भलाई अता फरमाई है।
फसल्लि लिरब्बिक वन्हर।
तो अपने परवरदिगार के लिए नमाज पढ़ा करो और कुर्बानी किया करो।
इन्न शानिअक हुवल अबतर।
कुछ शक नहीं कि तुम्हारा दुश्मन ही बेनाम रहेगा।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I am Dr. Talat Shabir, Director of China-Pakistan Study Center at Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's seminar titled Global Governance Initiative, China's Vision of a Just and Fair Order, jointly hosted by China-Pakistan Study Center at Institute of Strategic Studies and China Media Group. We are gathered here at the moment when the world is witnessing profound changes marked by shifting power dynamics, deepening economic interdependence, rapid technological transformations, and growing urgency of climate challenges. The Global Governance Initiative is a forward-looking vision that seeks to make international governance more inclusive, representative, and responsive. At its heart are 5 guiding concepts: sovereign equality, international rule of law, multilateralism, people-centered development, and results-oriented cooperation. These principles provide both direction and practical pathways for reforming global governance, ensuring that decision-making is not dominated by few, but reflects the aspiration of all nations, particularly the developing world. By emphasizing fairness, inclusivity, and collective benefit, the GGI aims to fulfill governance gaps in critical areas such as climate change, financial reforms, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity, thereby offering solutions that are just and sustainable. For Pakistan, the relevance of such an initiative is very clear. There are challenges in addressing poverty, bridging the digital divide, adapting to climate change, and regulating the frontiers of artificial intelligence and cyberspace. Meeting these challenges requires collective dialogue, joint responsibility, and equitable representation rather than unilateral approach. Pakistan and China can work together in shaping a governance architecture that is just, participatory, and responsive to the needs of our people. The GGI provides a platform for countries like ours to contribute meaningfully to shaping norms, fostering cooperation, and ensuring that development and progress are shared by all. At China-Pakistan Study Center at the Institute, our mission is to foster constructive debate and generate ideas that can enrich policy discourse. Today's seminar is part of that effort. We are fortunate to have among us a diverse group of distinguished diplomats, academics, practitioners, and thought leaders whose insight will help us better understand both the opportunities and challenges in advancing this vision of governance reforms. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we begin our proceedings, and I would just request the management to run Ms. Wang Li, who is country head, China Media Group, Islamabad, a brief video by her.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wang Lei from the Urdu service of China Media Group. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. First of all, on behalf of our Urdu service of China Media Group, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the partner of this event, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. I also wish to acknowledge our distinguished guests here today, including Mr. Murtaza Solanki, spokesperson for the President of Pakistan and old friend of CRI, and leaders from the Chinese Embassy in Pakistan. Thank you for taking the time to attend our event. The year 2025 marks the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. At this historic juncture, President Xi Jinping put forward the Global Governance Initiative, GGI, at the SCO Plus meeting in Tianjin earlier this month, offering China's wisdom and solution to improve global governance and to promote a fairer and more equitable international order. The GGI builds on the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, further demonstrating China's commitment to build a community with a shared future for mankind. With its 5 core concepts: sovereign equality, international rule of law, multilateralism, a people-centered approach, and real results. The initiative charts the course for unity, cooperation, and joint response to global challenges. In advancing this process, the media plays an unique and vital role. As a leading international media organization, China Media Group is committed to building bridges of communication and conveying the vision of equality, cooperation, and win-win progress to enhance mutual understanding and trust worldwide. Dear friends, as a journalist, I'm filled with anticipation for my upcoming visit to Pakistan. I look forward to experiencing the rich culture and warm hospitality of this country, and above all, to share the true voices of Pakistani people with Chinese and international audience through my work. I wish today's seminar great success, and I sincerely hope that every exchange and every story I encounter in Pakistan will become part of new chapter in China-Pakistan friendship. Thank you.
We thank you, Ms. Wang, for your message. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Ambassador Suhail Mahmood for his welcome remarks. Ambassador Suhail Mahmood is Director General of Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad. He rose to the prestigious position of Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, where he played a key role in shaping Pakistan's diplomatic engagements all over. Sir, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Talit. Ambassador Inamul Haq Saab, former Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman BOG ISSI, Excellencies, esteemed speakers, distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It is indeed a distinct pleasure to welcome everyone to this international seminar on the Global Governance Initiative, China's Vision of a Just and Fair Order. The ISSI is delighted to hold this important event in collaboration with the China Media Group. We are privileged to have a group of very distinguished speakers, including senior diplomats, practitioners, scholars, think tank experts, and media persons. Our special thanks to our honored guests from Bangladesh, Major General Fazl Ilahi Akbar, Chairman, Foundation for Strategic and Development Studies, joining us as the keynote speaker. I also warmly welcome Councillor Wang Xinji from the Chinese Embassy, and we would be shortly joined by former Minister for Information, Mr. Murtaza Solanki, currently serving as the spokesperson of the President of Pakistan. We would all stand to benefit enormously from the rich insights of these esteemed speakers and deepen our understanding of this 4th global initiative unrolled by President Xi Jinping in as many years since 2021. I should also note that this is the ISSI's 4th seminar in this series. Earlier, we have organized separate seminars on the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative. These seminars have helped us engage both the research and policy communities in Pakistan on these landmark initiatives and assess China's contribution in terms of addressing the key global deficits of peace, security, development, and trust. Distinguished participants, the Global Governance Initiative was announced by President Xi Jinping during his address to the SCO Plus meeting in Tianjin on 1st September 2025. Providing the context, President Xi noted that 2025 marks the 80th anniversary of both the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War and the founding of the United Nations. He underlined that while in the past 80 years, the historical trends of peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit have remained unchanged, the Cold War mentality, hegemonism, and protectionism also continue to haunt the world. As new threats and challenges mount, the world finds itself in a period of turbulence and transformation. Global governance has come to a new crossroads, he emphasized. To move forward in these difficult times, President Xi stressed the imperative of working together for a more just and equitable global governance system, hence the GGI. As outlined by President Xi, the GGI is based on 5 core principles. First, adherence to sovereign equality, stressing that all states, regardless of size, strength, and wealth, and particularly the developing countries, must be equal participants, decision makers, and beneficiaries in global governance. Second, abiding by the international rule of law, underscoring that the principles and purposes of the UN Charter and norms of international relations must be fully and uniformly observed by all. Third, practicing multilateralism, underlining that the status and authority of the United Nations must be firmly safeguarded and its irreplaceable key role in global governance ensured. Fourth, advocating people centered approach, affirming the indispensability of reform and improvement of the global governance system to ensure that the people in every nation are the actors and beneficiaries of global governance. And fifth, focusing on real results, emphasizing a holistic and systematic approach, coordinating global action, mobilizing necessary resources, and ensuring visible outcomes through practical cooperation on urgent concerns of our times, from poverty alleviation to climate change, and from the digital divide to artificial intelligence and cyberspace and outer space. In sum, the GGI seeks to inject greater inclusivity, democratization, and effectiveness in the international system and in the international order. Specifically, it aims to address the underrepresentation of the developing world or the global south, the erosion of international law and norms caused by unilateralism, and the palpable ineffectiveness of some key global governance institutions in addressing the urgent issues of the times. In that sense, as rightly stressed by Foreign Minister Wang Yi, the GGI comes at the right time, points the way forward, and demonstrates responsibility. The GGI also authoritatively repudiates the notion of China as a revisionist power, somehow bent on overturning the post World War II order. The concept paper on GGI, issued by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, makes clear, and I quote, to reform and improve global governance does not mean to overturn the existing international order or to create another framework outside the current international order. Rather, the goal is to make the existing international system and international institutions better at taking actions, working effectively, adapting to changes, responding promptly and effectively to various global challenges, and serving the interests of all countries, particularly developing ones. No matter how the international landscape changes, China will remain firm in safeguarding the international system with the UN at its core and the international order underpinned by international law would stand firmly on the right side of history, join hands with all progressive forces in the world to build a community with a shared future for humanity and make relentless efforts for mankind's noble cause of peace and development. Unquote. The GGI should also undoubtedly be seen as another important component of China's global role. President Xi's three earlier interconnected initiatives, the GDI, the GSI, and the GCI, address vital elements of the global agenda, namely development, security, and civilizational harmony. The GGI, with its focus on governance, fully complements its three predecessors. These initiatives have been well received in most parts of the world, especially in the global south, as they prove their value as global public goods. Furthermore, guided by Chinese wisdom, these initiatives represent an alternative vision of a stable and cooperative world in these times of turbulence and chaos. They also serve as the building blocks of a more just, equitable, and multipolar order. For its part, Pakistan has welcomed the GGI and reiterated its support at the highest level during the 80th session of the UN General Assembly in New York last week, stressing that it offers a comprehensive framework for a more just and inclusive development. In our perspective, the GGI will help strengthen the UN centered multilateral system, enhance the role of developing countries in global governance, and accelerate progress towards sustainable development goals. We also view it as a framework that complements and reinforces initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, with which Pakistan has an enduring partnership through the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. Going forward, it would be important not only to utilize SEO as a platform, but also build new mechanisms such as Friends of GGI and garner the broadest possible support of the UN membership. Let me conclude by recalling what Foreign Minister Wang Yi recently said, and I quote, "Facing a world of changes and chaos, China will continue to stand on the right side of history, on the side of human progress, and on the side of multilateralism, advocating unity and cooperation rather than division and confrontation." Unquote. This is the spirit with which Pakistan is fully aligned and stands ready to work with China, the United Nations, and the broader international community to advance the objectives of the GGI and to build together a world with peace, prosperity, and a shared future for mankind. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Sol Mahmood. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now request the keynote speaker of today's event for a keynote speech. Major General Fazl-e Akbar, commissioned in 1971, served in Bangladesh's first UN peacekeeping mission and as UN observer during Iran-Iraq war. From 2004 to 2006, he was first Bangladeshi to serve as force commander of United Nations mission in Sudan. He has also held various senior positions in Bangladesh Army, including Director General of Military Operations. He is currently chairman of Foundation for Strategic and Development Studies, focusing on governance, national security, and development policy. General Akbar, you have the floor, please, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's chair, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For me, it has been a great event to be coming back to Bangladesh after 32 years. Last time I came was in 1993, when my own platoon mate was also the battalion commander, so was I in Bangladesh. And Since my commissioning in Pakistan military in 1971, this is my second visit. And for my wife, it's the first. So it's a very historical visit. And it was, of course, I just got a barely 24 hours plus time to prepare and fly out. So I landed yesterday, had a jet lag, obviously at this stage, it doesn't go over very quickly. But anyway, I'm very pleased to be here and having given the floor to say something on a very pertinent issue, which actually hinges on the future of the global good governance and good order. With this small introduction of mine, and thanks for whatever you have said, I'd like to start with my small keynotes. Maybe it will exceed beyond 10 minutes. I hope you'll bear with me. And much of it, actually, the DG has already said. I didn't have any previous coordination, what to say and what not to say. So please bear with me and excuse me if anything I have repeated. Thank you very much. As you all know, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey condemned the violence as genocide ongoing for over 700 days, noting that more than 65,000 people had been killed, including 20,000 children, and stressing that for the last 23 months, a child has been murdered by Israel in Gaza every hour. He described collapsed healthcare, starvation, and children undergoing amputations without anesthesia as the lowest point of humanity, warning that silence makes others accomplice to this barbarity. They visit our country and plot to attack it. They negotiate with delegations and plot to assassinate the members of the negotiation, said Qatar's Amir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, recalling at Doha on 9 September had suffered attacks which targeted the negotiating delegation of Hamas in a residential neighborhood. Israel desires to impose its will on its Arab neighborhood, and everyone who opposes its will is either anti-Semitic or a terrorist. Despite that, Israel's allies realizes this fact and reject it. Ladies and gentlemen, present in the August occasion will be surprised to know that these were the few voices of resentment and frustration uttered by two heads of states from the Muslim countries. They are overwhelmingly saddened by the sights of barbarism taking place at Gaza and elsewhere in Muslim countries, in flagrant violations of international law and iota of humanity. While these words of desperation should have been reciprocated with some words of solace and guilty feeling, Benjamin Netanyahu told fellow world leaders on 26 September this year that Israel must finish the job against Hamas in Gaza, giving a defiant speech despite growing international isolation over his refusal to end devastating war in Gaza. He further added, Western leaders may have buckled under the pressure, quote, and I guarantee you one thing, Israel won't. Responding to countries' recent decision to recognize the Palestinian statehood, Netanyahu said, your disgraceful decision will encourage terrorism against Jews and against innocent people everywhere. The two-state solution that the international community has embraced for decades will not happen, he said at the airport on arriving on Thursday, the 25th of September this year. If these were not enough to project a grim picture as to how UN has been turning redundant in meting out justice for the member states, then let's hear of the frustration gripped the European newspaper Sting Themis. Israel's unilateral decision to execute a genocide in the year 2025 or to bomb everybody from Lebanon, Iran, Qatar, wrote the paper on 11 September, and continued reporting when it comes to Gaza genocide, whereby people are tacitly led to utter death by starvation in the year 25, and nobody does anything about it. The EU is just watching this global charade, remaining numb and abruptly inhuman. Ladies and gentlemen, when somberness and descended on the horizon of once bustling Gaza and Beirut, when the skyline of Qatar or Iran is often violated by Israeli Air Force with impunity, an initiative under the chairmanship of Chinese President Xi Jinping, the called Global Governance Initiative, G2I, has come as a ray of hope for the helpless people across the globe. With that little bit of introduction, I would now switch over to the main part of the discussion. What is Global Governance Initiative? The Global Governance Initiative is a diplomatic foreign policy initiative proposed by China, first unveiled on 1st September during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tianjin. It is one of the 4 global initiatives presented by China. In light of the current international system shortcoming in addressing pressing political, security, and development issues, his signature foreign policy-oriented project, the GGI, ushers in a new hope for the people globally who are strangulated under injustice and unilateralism. The Middle East in particular faces escalating conflicts that require effective application of international law and governance to resolve outstanding issues. Most importantly, a just and lasting resolution of the Palestine issue. That the current system under the UN has miserably failed to implement. As a major country and a permanent member of the UN Security Council, China contemplates to fulfill this responsibility in international affairs through the above-mentioned initiatives. The GGI aims to orchestrate response by China and others to erase deficits in the current global governance order. That includes lack of representation of the developing countries, weak multilateralism, unilateralism by powerful states, and failures to address global challenges adequately. Other aims include reinforcing the role of the United Nations and other multilateral institutions, reforming parts of the international architecture to be more inclusive, bridging divisions between the North and the South, addressing the global threats like climate change, inequality, technology, and governance. What are the 5 guiding principles of the G2I? Sovereign equality, abiding by the international law, practicing multilateralism, people-oriented centered approach, taking real actions, concrete results, delivering practical outcomes, not rhetoric, by addressing the root causes and tangible problems, especially for the developing and the vulnerable countries, will shape the future of the GGI. The functions, the conflict resolution, rulemaking, coordination of policies, capacity building, collective enforcement, sanctions, international court rulings, etc. A lighthouse for the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go through the aims, guiding principles, and functional scopes, one region that flashed across my mind where GGI can be the most relevant option given the present and maybe foreseeable future scenarios of flagrant violations of the international laws, utter apathy of the muted humanity, the Middle East. In the Middle East, based on 5 main principles, namely sovereign equality, respect for international law, multilateralism, prioritizing people, and taking concrete action, the Global Governance Initiative is expected to have a significant and decisive impact on governance in the Middle East. The Chinese President, His Excellency Xi Jinping, in his inaugural speech stressed upon there should be no double standards, and the house rules of the law or the house rules of the few countries must not be imposed upon the majority others. These principles provide a framework and mechanism needed to reform and improve global governance and justice. This requires a serious and responsible dialogue among the Arab and regional parties to enhance coordination and cooperation with China in order to adopt and advance the principles and goals of this very initiative. The success of the initiative depends on multilateralism instead of the current international system of unilateralism, in vogue away from the exclusive and controlled by certain powers, such as the US. GGI thus envisages application of international law through justice and equality based on partnership and mutual respect for all without exception. Accordingly, this initiative represents a genuine, effective, and consistent opportunity to uphold the international system, steer towards justice and integrity, address outstanding issues in the region, most importantly, the Palestine issue, and thus achieve peace, stability, and prosperity. What are the mechanisms? However, having stated above, the GGI can go about working on issues that are either shelved under carpet or need to be addressed immediately. But there are concerns that in presence of the UN and other multilateral organizations trying to focus on, if not all, but a few issues, how will the newly formed GGI is going to navigate through this diplomatic quagmire? As GGI is new, so mechanisms are less fully specified, at least now. Some likely mechanisms could be working through United Nations and its member states, engaging regional multilateralism organization. China has really support in forums like SCO and indicates that GGI will use multilateralism as platforms. Potential reforms of international financial architecture, addressing deficits in global financial governance, debt, access to credit, currency system, and tariffs imposed. Cooperation in sectors like artificial intelligence, climate change, public health, trade, possible coordinated norms as regulatory frameworks. The potentials of the GGI and the initiative that can help resolve Gaza and Palestine. The world apathy to Gaza has been conspicuous. Israel adopted the most hated, barbaric, scorched earth policy. Thousands of infants died in their diapers. Innumerable died of hunger. Millions rendered homeless. Even shanties being burned and bombed, leaving hundreds and thousands and the most abundant group of people on earth, barely surviving in appalling conditions right in front of the helpless world. Amongst all these indifferences, tales of helplessness, South Africa has shown the Gazites and the Palestinians are not alone in their journey to live, and some people are fighting for justice. With creation of the GGI, a more robust and durable policy to safeguard the people of Gaza in particular and Palestine in general can be worked out following its guideline principles and mechanisms as under. The greater international attention and legitimacy. If GGI supports the principles of sovereign equality and international law, it could bolster Palestinian calls for statehood, recognition, and legal protection under the international norms. Multilateral mechanisms may offer more equitable platforms for Palestinians to voice their concerns. Reforms for the existing international institutions. The GGI should push for reforms at the UN, international courts, or other global mechanisms so that rights of the occupied territories are more robustly enforced. Humanitarian and development support. If parts of the GGIs focus on a people-centered action and addressing real outcomes, that could mean better coordination of aid, infrastructure rebuilding, public health in Gaza. International financing of commitments could be mobilized under multilateral frameworks, perhaps with less politicization. Multilateral diplomatic pressure. States inclined to uphold multilateralism could coordinate to pressure actors violating international law in the Gaza. Palestine, collective diplomatic or legal pressure could carry more weight than individual state efforts. Finally, reduced unilateralism. If the GGI helps to reduce the influence of unilateral interventions or policies by powerful states that may override the rights of statutes of Palestinian territories, this may be beneficial. The challenges. Unilateral policies of the US deliberately disregard solving the Palestinian issue. Arbitrarily disapprove any international consensus and provide steady financial, military, and political support to Israel. At the same time, it opposes cooperation with other international actors who promote multilateralism and justice in addressing global crises, especially the Palestine issue. Consequently, if it refuses to give consent to Chinese initiatives in international forums, even when widely welcomed by other member states due to their alignment with international law and the UN Charter. Israel, on the other hand, denies to acquiescence to repeated calls of the UN General Assembly and Security Council to halt the war in the Gaza, allow humanitarian aid, lift the blockade, and end its unilateral actions in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Moreover, it interferes in the internal affairs of the neighboring countries, launching attacks under the pretext of combating extremism and terrorism, while pushing to reshape the region's map in line with the Security Council interests and vision of the Greater Israel, disregarding the sovereignty, rights, and security of other countries. Thus, it is US-Israel joint policies that are among the key challenges to achieve the goals of the Global Governance Initiative and genuine governance of the Middle East, apart from the Arab rulers, duly frightened by the prospects of Arab Spring fashioning out of ordinary movements, challenging their century-long seat of powers. Israel has been thriving under these conditions of fear-mongering and recklessly executing her monstrous policy of annihilation with most impunity. Though this crisis absorbs global attention, but solution remains elusive as major powers remain divided on modalities, and invariably the US will use its veto power to any Security Council resolution supported by China and its partners, leaving the matter at the back burner. The Iran issue. As Iran is a major Muslim country with significant global, regional, and political weight, GGI's impact could play multifaceted roles in keeping with visions of the Middle Eastern solutions. If Iran is undertaken by the GGI, it will create the following resonance in terms of opportunities. Diplomatic space. It will encourage the sovereign equality and respect of international law. Iran might benefit from more diplomatic space. For instance, if multilateral institutions are reformed to be more inclusive, Iran might have a stronger standing, particularly in forums where it has been marginalized. Sanctions regimes and international law. Iran has endured many unilateral sanctions from the US and its allies. Under the GGI, pressure might build to address or reform the legal status or legitimacy of some sanctions, especially these lacking multilateral backing or legal basis in the international law. Cooperation in global challenges. Areas like climate change, water scarcity, energy, technology, health could offer opportunities for Iran to engage more cooperatively, both regionally and globally, beneath the GGI umbrella, in ways that bring resources without being over-politicized. Trade and investment. If global financial architecture reforms include more access for developing countries or reduce dependency on certain hegemonic structures. Example, financial systems dominated by certain countries, Iran could benefit economically. Also, with more multilateral pathways, economic sanctions might be challenged more robustly. In my conclusion, given the above problems and prospects that GGI may offer, there lies a great potentiality for the GGI to come out as the best alternative to hitherto the initiative of the UN, that by general beliefs seldom go beyond US interest and influence. GGI could navigate between the problems, prospects, and potentials during the formative years, could usher into a new era of hope for the disillusioned world looking forward to a savior organization for the suffering masses. The Global Governance Initiative, as currently proposed, holds out potentialities for reforming global system to be more fair, inclusive, and responsive to the challenges faced by the developing countries and vulnerable populations. For the Muslim world, including the situations of Palestine, Gaza, and Iran, there are real potential benefits in enhancing legal protections, providing more equitable diplomatic avenues, better humanitarian outcomes, and participation in shaping the global order. However, these benefits are not guaranteed. These are significant challenges: geopolitical competition, the risk of symbolic gestures without substance, internal capacity constraints, the possible selective implementation of norms, the extent to which Muslim majority states, civil society, and citizens are able to engage, hold institutions accountable, align international reforms with local needs and values will largely determine the impact. In moving forward, it will be important for Muslim world stakeholders to approach the GGI not merely as a passive recipient of global order changes, but as active spheres of it, defining priorities, ensuring accountability, and ensuring the promises of sovereignty, international law, and human dignity are realized in practice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Major General Fazle Lai Akbar, for your very comprehensive keynote speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another message, and message is from Ambassador Khalil Hashmi, who is a senior Pakistani diplomat with 3 decades of experience in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. Before assuming charge as Pakistan's ambassador to China in November 2023, he served as Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations. We have the message.
Director General Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, Director CPSC Dr. Tal Shabir, Director China Media Group Ms. Wang Tianting, Ambassador Moinul Haq, distinguished panelists, scholars, and participants. It is a great pleasure to join you through this video message at this international seminar co-organized by the China-Pakistan Study Center of ISSI and China Media Group. This year, as we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, the moment is both symbolic and urgent. Symbolic because it reminds us of the collective resolve that gave birth to the UN Charter in 1945. Urgent because the contemporary international environment is marked by turbulence, strategic rivalries, widening inequalities, technological disruptions, and the escalating climate emergency. These challenges have brought into sharp focus the efficacy of the existing global governance architecture. Whether the existing global governance institutions are fit for purpose, or whether the principles and values that define the framework of these institutions continue to remain a driving force. These are no longer abstract academic pursuits or questions, but have assumed greater urgency and salience. Against this backdrop, President Xi Jinping's presentation of the Global Governance Initiative earlier this month represents an inspiring approach and a wise roadmap. It rightly affirms the centrality of the United Nations, multilateralism, international law, and responds to the aspirations of the Global South for greater representation and justice. It builds upon China's earlier global initiatives such as the GDI, the GSI, and the Global Civilization Initiative, together offering a coherent framework to reform and revitalize the global governance system. For Pakistan, these principles and these frameworks resonate very well. Our nation has consistently championed multilateralism and centrality of international law and peaceful resolution of disputes, as well as the right of all states, small or big, to have an equal voice in shaping decisions that affect all of us. We firmly believe that legitimacy and effectiveness of international institutions must flow from the principles of inclusivity, effectiveness, fairness, and respect for international law. Distinguished friends, our world does not lack resources or knowledge. It, however, often lacks the will to cooperate. It is here that initiatives such as the GGI can inspire renewed collective resolve. They call upon us to foresee and chart practical pathways forward to overcome the common challenges in the realms of peace, security, and development. Allow me to offer three propositions that are vital and aligned with GGI vision. First, the United Nations must remain at the heart of global governance. However, some of its organs do require reform to reflect contemporary needs. The Security Council in particular must become more representative, not by adding more permanent seats, but by including more long-term and elected members, especially from developing countries. International financial institutions should better respond to the growing needs of developing countries to alleviate their debt burdens and development financing needs. Second, greater investments are needed to revitalize and reform the intergovernmental organizations. Regional organizations such as the SCO, ASEAN, and SAARC should coordinate to create synergies, avoid fragmentation, and ensure that rule of law governs international conduct. Platforms such as BRICS should decide on its membership expansion based on merit instead of biased political lenses. Thirdly, ultimately, governance is about delivery and results. The needs of the Global South must be prioritized, including poverty alleviation, sustainable development, fair digital access, and climate resilience. Equally, the notion of security must be grounded in the principles of equal and undiminished security for all. Distinguished colleagues, the Pakistan-China partnership stands as an example of how nations can collaborate to deliver public goods, whether in infrastructure, connectivity, disaster relief, or regional stability. Our cooperation, anchored in trust and mutual respect, is a reminder that solidarity among states is not only possible, but it is essential. This seminar, bringing together diverse voices, serves as a platform to deepen such solidarity. It fosters both ideas and actions. Actions to strengthen the legitimacy of the UN, to give voice to the voiceless, and to create governance structures that truly reflect the aspirations of all states, big or small. In closing, let me commend ISSI and CMG for convening this important dialogue. May today's deliberations help us reinforce the central messages of GGI, not as a distant aspiration, but as a living, evolving system responsive to current challenges, rooted in fairness and oriented towards a just and prosperous future for all of us. Thank you and Sheshe.
We thank Ambassador Khalil Hashmi, Pakistan's ambassador to China, for his video message. And ladies and gentlemen, I would now invite Mr. Shakil Rame for his remarks. Shakil Rame is a political economist and Chief Executive Officer of Asian Institute of Eco-Civilization Research and Development. With over 15 years of Sustainable Development Policy Institute in leadership and research roles, he specializes in economy, climate change, governance, non-traditional security, and diplomacy. You have the floor, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Talat and ISSI for inviting me here to talk about this very important initiative. I think much has been said and the characteristics of the GGI have been discussed. I will start from different angle. President Xi Jinping, while introducing the GGI, he has said governance is at crossroads. The question is why he is saying the governance is at the crossroad. Very simple. If we look the global context and the existing order, it failed to deliver on its promises. In 1945, what promises were made to bring the common prosperity to the humanity? There was a promise, respect for the sovereignty and the diversity. There was a promise, the rule of law. There will not be a law of jungle. And there would be respect for the human life. So these four indicators are the basic, the rest is the story. So the system has failed to deliver on these four indicators. Why? The most important question is why? And that will be also answer why the governance is at the crossroad. Number one, the powerful countries militarized the global governance system. They wanted to dictate. They wanted to negate the rule of law. Ultimately, they came up with the idea of clash of civilizations. They formalized the idea of militarization of the global governance system. And which is the basis for all the miseries that humans are facing these days. From where it originates, I don't need to mention about the military-industrial complex of the US and the Europe. Because they were running the system and they ultimately militarized it. You look around yourself. If any country is not obeying or not aligning their objective with the US or their countries, so what they will do? Sometimes they will find the weapons of mass destruction, which they can never prove. But they have militarized the system. Second, exclusive. Although it was promised, it will be inclusive, but the system has become exclusive. The most prominent examples are two institutions, UN Security Council. And the worst crisis happened in 1960 when the Secretary General was not decided due to superpowers, two superpowers at that time, the USSR and the USA. Still now, a few days back, USA handed over the right to the Israel to continue the genocide. It's a system is exclusive, that's mean. No matter how they are operating and how many countries are voicing for it, but if I don't agree, you don't need to worry. It will not happen. The second example is the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF, World Bank, where the US have literally the veto power. For example, there is needed of the 85% votes to make any major decision at the IMF or the World Bank. And the US at the IMF, it have the 16% vote, and at the World Bank, it has 15.85% vote. So rest of the world can decide anything, but until unless the nod is not coming from the US, nothing will happen. And that brings us to the level of the end of history, where the Western country says our civilization is final. So the modernization have been achieved. But ultimately, let's say, in other words, it is a confession by the Europe and the West. They cannot think more about the modernization. They don't have the capacity to lead the new wave of the modernization. But they wanted to teach us in this way like that they are the superior. And that led to the arrogance of the system. Some are more important than the other. Arrogance is a very important element we need to understand, because it's a mother of all type of the destructions. Once you become arrogant, you don't listen to anybody. You think you are the best. What you think is important. That's ultimate. And it comes from your subordinates and your friends, because they always tell you, sir, you are the best. The vision, the leadership, the quality. You don't need to listen to anybody. You can do anything. And the friends, they like that. China is going through these days. Every friend say that China is the best, China is the best, China is... Okay, they are the best. But being friend, we also have to keep an eye if China is making a mistake. Because China is governed by the human. And the human are prone to make a mistake. The best quality China right now they are listening and they're trying to refine. They say it's a learning process. So we must, in the system, become arrogant. And that is creating problem for everybody. No, when we have to see the GGI, so China have to keep in mind these elements. The new governance system must not be militarized. The new governance system must not be exclusive or based on the arrogance. And it must be supported by actions. Like we have seen in the existing system, sometimes we see the slogan of World Trade Organization, sometimes UNFCCC, sometimes Sustainable Development Goals, then Millennium Development Goals, then that goal. But where is the result? So these actions are the system, the new governance system must be supported by actions. And I believe China will do that because in the past we have seen the President Xi Jinping, whenever he took any initiative, he supported it with the action. Like in his speech at, I think, at the 75th anniversary of the UN, he said, we will talk less and take more actions. And one of the most prominent example in the recent days, Global Development Initiative. I will not talk about the BRI because I will know it. You know how many project has been commenced under that initiative? Any rough idea? 1,800 program under the Global Development Initiative has been started. And China have diverted 23 billion US dollars for those development programs for the different countries. So the same spirit should goes with the GGI. We can talk more about the Chinese system. And Chinese system, I think if China is able to replicate it's a local governance system, then I think we will see a better world. Why I say that? Because if you look the Chinese governance model, there can be many indicators, but the 2-3 indicators are very important. How it defines the governance. I personally define the governance. Governance is a system when you keep the dreams alive of people. If any system that keeps the dream alive of people for a secure and a prosperous life, the governance system is delivering. How it make it sure? The rule of law. That is a key in Chinese system, in a governance system. Even in the modernization of the governance drive in China, if you look at that, so one thing is very key, that is the rule of law. It's explicitly read, everybody have to submit to the rule of law. Country will be run through the rule of law. Power will come from the rule of law. If the state have to exercise the power, it should come from the rule of law, not just from the wish list of somebody. And lastly, the Chinese system strive to achieve the common prosperity. I think these are the 3 indicators which are needed at the global level. There is no rule of law, there is exclusion, so there is an uneven development, and there is the arrogance. And there is militarization, because when you have the militarization, there will be no rule of law. And that is a key element also for the developing country to learn, including Pakistan. Security and the militarization, they have different meanings. In Pakistan, the security has been defined and militarized like economic security. We are trying to militarize the economic security. And on every stage, we say that it's like we are architecting their militarization. And the worst example is USSR. If you have to learn the worst part of that, how it collapsed due to the militarization of their decision-making and the economy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shakil Rame, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Dr. Akbar Nasir Khan for his comments, remarks. Dr. Akbar Nasir Khan is a senior public policy and law enforcement professional, currently serving as Additional Director General of FIA. He has held key positions including IG Islamabad Police and DG NECTA. He specializes in counterterrorism and public safety and institutional reforms. Dr. Nasir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Talat. And thank you very much for having me, ISSI, on this distinguished alongside the panelists. As somebody would say, the majority of the world, as I would say now, or probably always have been living in interesting times. And this is true for the people who are here, who are experiencing it, and more true for the young people who are in this room, because what they are witnessing nowadays, it was not written in the books. And when I'm talking about the books, I'm talking about the books of international humanitarian law. I'm talking about the books of the international public international law. I'm talking about the covenants and declarations and treaties of the international human rights laws. I'm also talking about the books about the fair trade in the world, for which this world has taken years and years to come to. And all of a sudden, within a very short span of time, they have been thrown to the dustbin. There can't be more interesting times than we are witnessing. And this is not only for the breaking of the laws. What we are saying and what Shakil Sahab was just expressing, I heard also that and read by some wise man that only thing worse than ignorance is arrogance. But interestingly, the people who are doing it are not ignorant. They know, they have the alma maters of the world from which we and many of us aspire to graduate and learn with a passion to implement. However, when we come to this time, we see that those things are not implemented. So whether the books are wrong, or teachers are wrong, or practice is malpractice. Probably the last one is the thing, because the human race has developed these values of transparency, rule of law, inclusivity, fairness, justice. We all term them as global values. And those are the foundations of any governance system. If though any governance system which is not built on these values cannot be called a governance system. It could be a rule of a mafia. It could be a gangsism. It could be anything but governance. Governance in its essence has positivity. However, what we come to see is what is happening. We have the victims, and victims not of the violence only. As I mentioned earlier, victims of economic deprivations, victims of hunger, victims of natural calamities, which many refuse to accept that there is anything like climate change and its effects. If anybody has had any doubt, they should come with me and we take a ride to the south of Punjab or the north of KP, and we see how the life element of water can devastate the life. Just because we have not spent enough time in analyzing what should have been done to improve the governance and protect the people. Being a practitioner, I would say that what we have to do is, and more coming to the more into actions, we have to prioritize the needs and the rights of the victims. And we have to take practical steps. Along with that, we have to name and shame the perpetrators. If we will remain silent, we will be with the perpetrators. If we not expose them or at least raise our voice, we will be with the perpetrators. And lastly, I think where the global GGI comes into play is the collaboration. We have to collaborate with the people and the action takers across the borders, across the institutions. And that is the way to make a critical mass of those efforts, which will bring about the change. We know the malady. We know the response. The time is for action. And I think the initiatives like GGI will help us to come together and form a joint action platform where we can address those maladies and take things forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser Saab, for a very comprehensive presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, now we have a speaker, panelist from China, Dr. Shui Li. Dr. Li is a research fellow at Shanghai Institute for International Studies. He holds PhD in International Law from East China University of Political Science and Law. His research focuses on international law, global economic system, and international organizations with numerous publications on peacekeeping, post-conflict peace building, and China's role in global governance. Dr. Lee, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And many thanks for the kind invitation by the IISI. I'm very glad to join this very important seminar. So I will just focus on the global governance initiative, and it's and also a small comparison of how China and the U.S. conducted this kind of relations in this multilateral or global affairs. So first, the global governance initiative is actually together with other three former initiatives, GSI, GDI, GCI. Actually, they constitute integral parts of China's vision for the community of shared future for humanity. So that's I think this is China, what we provided to the world, China's vision, and also we need we welcome other nations to join us together to build this human international community into a better world. So first, I focus on three elements related to this GGI. The first is respect for the sovereignty and respect for the rules, basic principles of the UN Charter. So I think China has always been a strong advocate of the principle of respect for state sovereignty. The state's sovereignty has always been the first guiding principle for when China conducting our relations with countries around the world, whether it's they are the Western countries or the countries from the global South. And so actually China has actually showing this support for example, in the BRI, we presented this kind of, we presented this BRI, but we are not saying that this is our own dominance. Actually, we said that the BRI should be conducted through this consultation and joint efforts. And then in the end, we need to have a shared benefit. So that's a Chinese approach. And we show that our respect for our country's sovereignty. And on the other hand, I think it's a sharp comparison that the United States has never shown this really sincere support for the state sovereignty. Actually, it's really interesting that in recent years, sometimes we hear the U.S. saying this kind of terms, respect for sovereignty, but only in the case of Russia-Ukraine conflicts. But in other cases, we can not say that. So this is clearly a hypocrisy of the U.S. policy. And what's more important is that, in particular, in what we see in the Gaza district, the U.S. is actually ignoring the Palestinian people's legitimate rights to self-determination. This rights is deriving from their long history of being a territory, a colonized territory under the Western rule. So they according to the international law and the UN Charter, the Palestinian people, they have the legitimate right to seek their own future status, when seek maybe to organize an independent states. So that's a basic rule under international law, but the U.S. is ignoring that. But not just ignoring that, the U.S. now is providing advanced weapons and arms to Israel, actually aiding and abetting the atrocity crimes committed in Gaza. So I think that's really a strong, sharp composition between China and the U.S. And not to mention that the U.S. in the past several decades, U.S. for such a long time sanctioning Cuba from joining, conducting normal trading and economic relations with the U.S. So that's the first element. The second is multilateralism. Actually, I think China, in this GGI, we just reiterated that we strongly support the UN and other multilateral platform. Actually, when we join other regional or multilateral cooperation mechanism other than UN, actually, for example, SCO, BRICS, in that case, I always have an open mind. Actually, we strongly support that openness of this regional or other regional or multilateral platforms, because we think that it's not exclusive. It's not targeting at other countries. So BRICS and SCO, they are mainly composed of those global South countries, but they are not targeting those Western countries. But on the other, but in the U.S. side, on the U.S. side, it's different. It's completely different. The U.S. In particularly under the Trump administration, they are actually withdrawing from a lot of international organizations, and actually they are strengthening their so-called mini-lateralism, actually through for example, G7 or some Quad or some AUKUS, this kind of these small clubs, exclusive club organized by led by the U.S. and actually confront targeting directly at maybe Russia, China, and Russia or other some countries. So this is not how the multilateral is moving on. So that's a strong, sharp composition, sharp contrast between China and the U.S. And also, as a third element, I think is action and result oriented. Because I think in the GGI, our concept paper mentioned that the post-war international order system is not a perfect one, and it has a lot of disadvantages and failed to meet with the demands of a lot of, in particular, those global South countries. But actually, the major obstacle now in the reform of the current existing international system is the Western country, in particular, United States. As we know that in the Bretton Woods system, institutions, in the IMF board approved in 2023 the 16th general review of its quota system. Actually, in that review, it will increase by 50% of the IMF available resources, and in that review actually will not increase China's shares and quotas in the IMF. So it's just increase the available funds for the IMF. But now, last year, the IMF they voted members. They wanted to pass this review and make it effective. But now, this year, we now see in the end of by the end of 2025, it's still not effective. That's just because the U.S. has not approved that, and in the future, I don't think the U.S. will approve that reform package. So that's actually the U.S. is standing in the way, because if the IMF has more available resources, it will have expand capacity to help those provide aid to those developing countries and global South countries. But the U.S. in the way, standing in the way. So that's the reason why I think China initiated and sponsored some new institutions. For example, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and also the BRICS new Development Bank. And also recently, President Xi proposed the setup of a new SCO development bank. But first, I think this new regional institutions are not meant to overthrow those existing global economic governance. Actually, it's complementary to those existing, for example, IMF and the World Bank. We just see that we cannot wait for the reform of those Bretton Woods institutions because it's too late and then always delayed. So we need certain actions taken and to address those demands and the urgent needs of the global South countries. So that's I think the why how we I think we need to how to interpret China's four initiatives. It's not just China's initiative. We initiated this proposed this initiative, but we welcome all the countries around the world to join us, not just global South countries. For example, AIIB, it have a lot of Western countries joining as members of AIIB. So China has always been keep an open mandate. So we welcome all countries to join our initiative and to strengthen our relations and to make this world a better world and a community and realize a vision for a community of a better shared future for humanity. So thank you for listening to us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for your presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Ambassador Moinul Haq for his presentation. Ambassador Moinul Haq is a seasoned Pakistani diplomat who joined Foreign Service in 1987. Over the course of his distinguished career, he has held several key positions, including Pakistan's ambassador to France and Pakistan's ambassadors to China. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Murtaza Solanki, spokesperson of the President of Pakistan, Ambassador Inamul Haq, the former chairman of ISSI, Chairman Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Director General Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, Major General Fazal Ilhai Akbar, the keynote speaker of our today's seminar from Bangladesh, Excellencies, Consular Wang Shangjie from Chinese Embassy in Islamabad, Dr. Akbar Nisar Khan, Mr. Shakil Rame, Dr. Lee, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon, and Dajia How. Many important speeches and remarks and comprehensive remarks have been made today. And since I think, the seventh speaker, so I suspect that there would be some overlapping in my remarks, for which I apologize in advance. Almost 12 years ago in 2013, Chinese President His Excellency Xi Jinping announced and proposed the vision of building a community with a shared future for mankind for the first time in a speech at Moscow State Institute of International Relations. In the next 10 years or so, he unveiled one by one the key pillars of building this community, which we today know as the 5 key initiatives of President Xi. Firstly, the Belt and Road Initiative was announced in the same year, 2013, in Kazakhstan, a visionary development initiative of global scale with membership of now over 130 countries, and China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is an integral and the most important corridor under BRI. Secondly, the Global Development Initiative, GDI, was launched in 2021 during his video address to UNGA, which basically aimed to further the UN SDGs. And many of you may not know that Pakistan became the first country to sign an MOU with China to become a partner country under GDI. Thirdly, the Global Security Initiative was launched during a speech in 2022 at Bao Forum, which was to build a balanced, effective, indivisible, and sustainable security architecture. Fourthly, the Global Civilizational Initiative, which was announced in 2023 in Beijing to promote exchanges and mutual understanding among civilizations. And lastly, the Global Governance Initiative, which we all know was unveiled recently at SCO Summit in Tianjin. So these 5 initiatives of President Xi form the key pillars, actually a blueprint and a roadmap for creating a just, peaceful, inclusive, and humane world, a community of shared future. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have gathered here to discuss GGI, this latest initiative. And for that, I thank the chairman, the director general, Dr. Thalak, and the China Media Group for organizing this important and timely seminar and inviting me to share my thoughts. Dear friends, let us now examine and evaluate the global environment in which GGI has been proposed. And I would like to do that by posing two questions. Is the global order, world order, is in flux, under threat, or crumbling? Secondly, is there a requirement to change, replace, or improve the current world order? We all know that after the two bloody wars in the last century, the nations got together to put in place a global system which would ensure peace and security based on sovereign equality, non-interference, respect for human rights, and economic and social advancement. Thus, UN and its different institutions were established to carry forward these lofty aims. However, unfortunately, since then, according to various surveys and sources, there have been somewhere between 150 to 300 conflicts and wars of various natures, with millions of dead, maimed, or displaced. The veto power, which was alluded by Mr. Shakil Rame as well, has been used over 300 times by P5, often blocking meaningful action, thus undermining legitimacy and effectiveness in preventing genocide, aggression, or mass atrocities. UNSC had failed to enforce its own resolutions, as we have seen in the case of Palestine or Kashmir. While overall, the global poverty has declined, inequality within and between nations remains high. The richest 1% hold more than half of the world's wealth, while billions lack access to basic services like education, health, and water. Rich countries have contributed most to climate change, but they continue to be on path of climate injustice by their failure to either take responsibility or to fulfill promises of climate financing and technology transfer to affected and vulnerable countries, Pakistan being the one. There has been selective application of human rights norms, and many times international community has failed to stop genocides like in Rwanda in 1995 or recently in Gaza. In this backdrop, no wonder that at the recent landmark 80th UNGA session in New York, the overall tone of the speeches made by world leaders was grim and gloomy, calling for reflection and action. Many of them termed the global peace and security situation as precarious, and while the world was seen to be at a tipping point. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the world is on the verge of breakdown and framed the current moment as dangerous. He warned that conflict, indifference, inequality, and impunity were weakening global order. President Lula of Brazil talked about the global order crisis, where we were witnessing repeated concessions to power players, attacks on sovereignty, arbitrary sanctions, and unilateral interventions. Slovenian President Natasha Musar lamented that UN could not live up to its ideals and the vision of creating a peaceful world. She warned against the world where only power prevails, calling for an inclusive, multilateral, multipolar world. Finland President Alexander Stubb declared that post-Cold War world order was over. He criticized UN Special Security Council as being outdated and misaligned with current realities. Citing intensifying conflicts, violations of international law, and a climate crisis that threatens our very survival, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also termed our world as more complex today than ever before. And as you all know, you might have seen the speech by President Trump where he called and criticized UN to be part of the problem than the part of the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, these and many other international voices, which are now frequent and amplified, clearly show the widening of cracks in the edifice of international governance architecture and the increasing strains on the current global order. In these current times, which UNSG has stated as dangerous, President Xi's global governance initiative has been timely, breathing a new life to the discourse and giving a workable framework to overcome our current challenges. I think Director General has already mentioned the key 5 elements of GGI, but I just want to repeat to tell from the Chinese Foreign Ministry concept paper the key values which they have attached to these 5 elements. The GGI aims to build a more just multipolar world order based on sovereign equality as the foremost premise, international law as the fundamental safeguard, multilateralism as the basic pathway, a people-centered approach, a very important element, as the underpinning value. I think speaker was mentioning about this, Dr. Akbar also, and the real results as the concrete outcome. And more importantly, Ambassador Sohail Mahmood also mentioned that, and I would repeat that it is very important that GGI has been framed not as an attempt to tear down the existing international order or replace global institutions like UN, though it has been redundant, as mentioned by Major General, but to reform, strengthen, and make governance fairer, more inclusive, and more effective. Let me conclude with these opening lines of UNESCO Constitution. UNESCO, as you know, is another important institution of UN. So it reads that since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Further, it states that peace should be founded upon the intellectual and moral solidarity of mankind, unquote. Let us hope and pray, ladies and gentlemen, that we all would have the moral and the intellectual strength and solidarity to build a lasting peace in the world as envisaged in GGI. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Moinul Haq, for your very comprehensive presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would request our guest of honor, Mr. Wang Shenji, who is head of political section at Embassy of People's Republic of China, for his remarks. You have the floor.
Yes. Excellency Murtaza Solanki, His Excellency Ambassador Sohail Mahmood and Khalid Mahmood, Excellency Ambassador Moin Haq and Inam Haq, Excellency Dr. Akbar Nasir Khan and Major General Akbar coming all the way from Bangladesh, and also Excellency Ahmed Said and my friend Shakir Ramey, and also Professor Shirley on the line. And good morning. First of all, really thanks for inviting me to attend this function jointly held by the ISSI and the CMG. And today's themes on global governance initiatives, everybody talked a lot and in a very clear and cut way. For me, it is also a learning process. And personally, I would not elaborate too much on the connotation of this idea. Somehow, And I think it is important that to elaborate some the inner logic for those 5 elements behind and how it is related to each individual countries. Because everybody understands that currently the world is far from peace. There are so many fixed terms that to describe this kind of the status. One is the a phenomenon that unseen for a century, or the world is undergoing profound changes, that is with the turbulence, that is given very sharp shifts. And I agree because it reflects the reality. And meanwhile, it is also would have long-term impact. And the good thing is that recently we all have been gladly to witness that Pakistan either are the headlines of the regional international relations or is closely related to that. And people think that it's time to celebrate. And more, of course, also advocates that to show some prudency. And of course, from the surface, people tend at the turning point might be as the main incident. That is through the self-defense that you're able to open up a new landscape. But look into a little bit deeper. Personally, I would attribute this success to the soundness of Pakistan's diplomatic strategy and also the optional paths. That is, you found the more chaotic the environment is, the more important it is to find a solid, sustained, and strong partner as the bedrock or as the cornerstones. And for this reason, this is also why the global governance initiatives matters, because only by doing so that you help to create a favorable external environment that no country can really divorce from. And then with this such kind of solid basis, you can take the diplomatic maneuvers combined with such techniques and strategies, then to the gain benefits to the maximum extent. And it is also important to note that if you can witness right now, the global South countries or the medium-sized countries all took so much trouble and making so harsh efforts to conduct the edging the newspapers articles and also try to make the partners diversification. It is all because from the inner psychology reflects the uncertainties or the collective anxieties. So this is also why we have to reform the current international regimes, because as you can see, the world order currently is witnessing the rise of the East and also decline of the West. Somehow, the international governance system is a little bit lagging behind. So it makes that the global South countries are underrepresented, and also the erosion of the UN authorities, as well as dysfunctions of the international regimes. So that's why we have to all find the common ground as understanding the importance that is to the needs of the times for the significance of the global governance initiatives. Because we are facing the common challenge. Let's see a superpower that rampantly and unilaterally launched the war of the tariff and trade, and using its advantages of the overall size or strength or the market size just to do the coercive measures, try to harvest the other country's gains. So should we just return to the rule of the jungles or law of jungles? Of course not, right? So that's why we have to put into the 2 keywords. One is equality, the other is rule of the law, into the 5 elements of the global governance initiatives. And take another example, like we are notice that the Pakistan and Saudi, the two countries, have come to conclude with SMDA. For the purpose or the perspectives of defense as well as pose the deterrence, of course, it fits two countries' needs and also to that factory. Meanwhile, we have to also have questions as to raise whether it is sufficient enough. Because if the Middle East situation is not getting peace, if the military actions taken by the Israel still going on, if the Palestinian people also suffering and dying at fast speed, this kind of the bilateral arrangement is not really can meet the demand or the request. So that's why, or these questions, we also have to reflect in a serious manner and try to solve the issue through more broader perspectives, that is, for the global governance initiatives, as to find a comprehensive, long-lasting, and root causes solutions to these problems. And so this is also why another three elements, that is the multilateralism, the people-centric approach, and action-oriented principles, are also embodied in the five connotations of the global governance initiatives. So in all, this external environment as a whole leaves no country alone. Pakistan, China, we cannot all just stand aloof. And also global governance initiatives is also, everybody speaks so highly of that, but somehow it is also not a panacea or master key. It should be combined with other initiatives, and many speakers have already mentioned, that is the global development initiatives, the global security initiatives, and global civilization initiatives. So these four initiatives proposed by Chinese side, shared by the world, actually can serve as a parallel four pillars. And combined with the conductor of the Belt and Road initiatives, it is like a wall that goes around the four pillars and make it rock solid, so as to jointly support the big mentioned called the shared future for mankind. So this is somehow the structural thinking of China's understandings as how to improve the current the international governance. And of course, many people also notice that each initiatives under which the framework that we help to provide so much opportunities and resources, like we can give some low-rate loans that can funding for the new projects. We can also provide some economic assistance, and including the personnel trainings and capacity building facilities. So all the initiatives can also be termed as a bank of the resources that can have Pakistan and other global South countries to make best utilize of this. So only by understanding the connotations and the inner logic of these initiatives, these four initiatives, and also to have a better understanding about how much the resources that you can allocate it, so you will more willingly to support it and more actively to participate in it. So these are some of the messages that I would like to share with you. And if time allows, that I would just to add two more points that through this topic. That is, we have to understand China's broad vision of improving global governance, not through the lens of a single dimension. As you can see that China has continuously proposed new initiatives. It is not that to do some competition with certain countries. Actually, our vision, our sense of mission is far more beyond that. So it is not one single country targeted. It is actually a more shared futures oriented. And it is, I think, should be acknowledged. So still right now, the China is advocating that we have to replace diversion with solidarity and confrontation, and other than the cooperation rather than confrontation, and also inclusiveness and with exclusions. So these things that also should be understood in a collective way. And second, we should foster international expectations for major countries to cooperate in addressing common human challenges, rather than always creating some binary confrontation narratives. Because, of course, we understand the future is belong to all mankind. So that's why I also request for all major powers and all the stakeholders to collaborate for the same goals. We should not have anyone left. But somehow, the country that claim itself as the first now it tends to be only one left. And if you have the chance to read the recent issue, the magazine's Economist, at least 3 articles now comes to a conclusion that the American alone. So we should, of course, to foster the international collective expectations that the major countries should collaborate together to address the common challenges like climate changes and also artificial intelligence, because it's some of the new domains without any kind of the standard rules and common understanding of the governance. So for this reason, China has been always the first that to try to call for the unity and the solidarities. So we should try to bring this kind of the positive narratives, not necessary to to give too much emphasis on those binary confrontation narratives. So this is also the point that I would like to share with you. So that's all for my speech. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wang Shengji, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would request the chief guest of today's event, Mr. Murtaza Solanki, for his speech. Mr. Murtaza Solanki is spokesperson for the President of Pakistan. He has also served as Federal Caretaker Minister for Information and Parliamentary Affairs. Sir, you have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Honorable Chairman, Board of Governor, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, the Director General of Institute of Strategic Studies. I also want to thank the other important, esteemed guests. My brother from brotherly Bangladesh, General Fazlillahi Akbar. I also want to thank the virtual and actual participants of this great session. I feel honored to be invited here in this galaxy of intellectuals. It's a matter of honor, and I must thank you for inviting me. I really want to thank China-Pakistan Study Center of Institute of Strategic Studies and the biggest global media network, China Media Group, for hosting this important session about global governance initiative, now popularly known as GGI, that was launched just at the start of the month in Tianjin by President Xi Jinping. It's shy of 1 month old, but as Honorable Ambassador Moinul Haq told us the very context and the background, how on the heels of BRI, GDI, GSI, GCI, how this global governance initiative has landed. Ladies and gentlemen, as the representatives of most nations started gathering in New York this month on September 9 in New York to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, on the very same day, Israel attacked the peace negotiators in Qatar and tried to destroy the values and spirit. This very institution was created 80 years ago. That very action and the way things have happened, and as Honorable Ambassador has told, how the global leaders have told us where we are at this historical juncture in terms of the global governance order. This last session of the United Nations, for me, sounded more like the swan song of the very institution. But at the same time, I would say the rollout of global governance initiative by President Xi Jinping on the very first day of this month in Tianjin, to me, sounded like a lark song. The lark song, or the blowing of the bugle, played in full, came on the heels of a great military parade 2 days later to commemorate the 80th anniversary of victory over fascism. As much as the paragons of the past tried to assure us about the importance of the so-called rule-based order, everybody, especially the people of the global south in that hall of the United Nations building, saw it as the dying deed of the order of misrule. How could you explain it otherwise? When convicted war criminal by international court, the architect of modern Auschwitz, the war criminal Netanyahu, the butcher of 20,000 Palestinian children, the mass murderer of over 65,000 Gazan civilians, the genocidal thug lecturing empty chairs of the United Nations body, while Mahmoud Abbas, the representative of the people of Palestine, was not even given the visa to attend the last rites, the very funeral of the UN body that promised an independent Palestinian state for Palestinian Arabs just 2 years after the very creation of United Nations in 1947. We must not forget the context and the background of global governance initiative. As we all have seen, the rule of big powers and the creation of the Brahmins Club of the majority of the UN Security Council members, justifying wars, illegal annexations, and mass murder sanctified by the sticks of the veto power they have been wielding for most of the history of this waning body. Call it divine retribution, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever you will. It is very interesting that the very announcement of global governance initiative came from the country that was denied even the membership till 1971. Although the concept of GGI is less than a month old, this thought has been in the making for many decades. Every failure of the UN, from Kashmir to Palestine, has acted as the catalyst for the birth of GGI. The Global Governance Initiative, announced in Tianjin on September 1, reaffirms the original values of the United Nations and brings development, security, and civilization under one practical roof. Its 5 core ideas, as excellently elaborated by Ambassador Moinul Haq, are simple to say, but maybe hard to execute. We will treat them as disciplines with clear milestones in Pakistan's plans. Excellencies, Pakistan comes to this debate with lived experience. When the systems work, a flood alert arrives in time, a vaccine is affordable, a small exporter reaches a market, and facts travel faster than fear. When the system fails, the weakest pay first and most. Our own history makes the case for better governance. After 2005 earthquake, coordinated relief, open reporting, and community leadership turned their despair into rebuilding in Azad, Jammu Kashmir, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. After the floods of 2010 and 2022, we learned again that climate does not stop at borders and that early warning, stronger local networks, and fast finance save lives and livelihoods. During the pandemic, multilateral platforms kept supply lines open for vaccines and essential goods. None of these moments were perfect. All of them showed that fair rules and honest delivery change real lives. The Global Governance Initiative gives us 5 guides. Let me link them to Pakistan's priorities in plain terms. Sovereign equality means voice with weight, not only a chair and a nameplate. Pakistan supports reform that brings more seats and more say for Asia, Africa, Latin America, and small island states. Representation should shape agendas, standards, and finance so that decisions reflect the many, not the few. International rule of law is the anchor. Durable peace rests on dialogue, justice, and development. In our region, the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is a matter of rights and legality. Since August 2019, our view has been anchored in law and rights. Since February 2021, both sides observed a ceasefire line along the line of control till it was rudely interrupted in the wee hours of May 7 under a flimsy pretext, violating international law, violating our sovereignty, killing our innocent civilians, and destroying our public places, including schools and places of worship. Nothing was done by this organization created to maintain international law and prevent wars. Quiet borders, risk, and free resources for growth and climate resilience. We will speak for rights, press for dialogue, and avoid steps that close the door to de-escalation. Real multilateralism means we share burdens and measure results. Pakistan has long contributed to United Nations peacekeeping. We have hosted millions of Afghan refugees for decades, often during our own economic stress. These are reminders that cooperation is a necessity, not a luxury. A people-centric approach turns policy into dignity. People do not live in communiques. They live in prices, jobs, hospitals, classrooms, and floodplains. Our social protection and digital payment rails aim to make help quick and fair. A farmer should receive a subsidy on time. A student should pay fees easily. A small enterprise should sail across the country without friction. Real results are the hardest test. Warm words must become written, dated outcomes. That calls for clear milestones, finance that arrives on time, and tracking that anyone can see. When evidence shows a better path, we change course. That's what public trust requires. Guided by these ideas, Pakistan proposes 3 practical tracks for joint work. First, climate and resilience. We stand on the front lines. We will seek loss and damage finance that's real, timely, and easy to access. At home, we will invest in adaptation that saves lives and livelihoods. Here is a simple yardstick. Let us cut average early warning lead times to villages by 30% over 2 monsoon cycles and publish the results. We welcome partnership that join satellites and sensors with local stewardship and that treat communities as co-designers, not as passive recipients. Second, connectivity and productivity capacity. Pakistan and China have moved into the second phase of CPEC that puts the focus on jobs, exports, and skills. Special economic zones should pass 4 tests. Do they lower logistic costs? Do they green energy mix? Do they transfer skills? Do they help small firms join large venue chains? Here is a clear goal. Let's reduce Karachi to Lahore freight dwell times by a quarter within 2 years through rules and logistic upgrades that everyone can see. Corridors should carry energy, fiber, knowledge, and opportunity to communities, not only to freight ports. Third, technology and trust. Artificial intelligence and data can widen access or widen inequality. The difference is rules. We will back interoperable standards, privacy protection, and responsible use. A concrete step is to publish annual independent audits of public sector algorithmic systems for bias and safety. We invite cooperation on skills, safety research, public interest compute for education and health, and digital public infrastructure that's open, secure, and rights respecting. Economic governance, let me just go through this. Let us test our sincerity with simple steps. Before we meet again, let's publish one shared page of milestones and dates that any citizen can read and measure. Set targets that matter to people, align finance with those targets, track progress in the open, correct course when evidence demands it. I thank China Pakistan Study Center and ISSI and China Media Group for creating this space for practical dialogue. May our work move from debate to design, from principles to practice, from promises to proof, with patience and respect for each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mumtaz Solanki, for your speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some time for Q&A. If you can briefly comment or ask a brief question, Admiral Said.
So thank you very much. I really appreciate very timely initiative of this global governance initiative to unfold the nut bolts of what is going to happen. And a lot of good points have come to light. Probably unanimity comes into play that global world order is at the brink of collapse, as Ambassador Moinul Haq said, and we agree to that. But now the new concept of GGI, I think the more important part which Mr. Wang Shengji himself indicated about, that GGI itself is not a turnkey solution to the the global problems. So it has to be seen in conjunction and in connection and interplay of all the other initiatives which are already there or which is going to be in play. So that is, I think, where we need to concentrate how it is going to be translated now into the actions. So that is, as the chair aptly highlighted, that now is the time to put across certain milestones with dates, with some actionable roadmap, transparent accountability, and inclusiveness. And that is the key, I think, in totality, where we will be looking forward to. Thank you.
I think it was comment G, sir. Zyada Radal sir.
Allow me to say one thing, to really welcome our brother from Bangladesh. This is indeed a great honor and privilege to have you, and I'm sure it's in the minds of all the people here. Yes, excellent ideas, an excellent exposition of what the 4 initiatives, including BRI, are about. I liked your comment, Mr. Solanki, about the fact that given the state of the world, this seems to be a divine intervention. And so congratulations, China, for taking that step. And I'm not surprised it's China, because perhaps if there's any country in the world today which has the fortitude and the track record of making such an event successful, it is China. The one thing which I feel perhaps not entirely missing, it's somewhere underneath from what we say, rule of law and so forth, is the word corruption. Corruption knows many, many forms. What's happening in Gaza is a corruption. What's happening in Kashmir is a corruption. It is a search of power, which has resulted in this. In fact, this whole group here, which is sitting, has one shortcoming, and that is that these initiatives, apart from the BRI, are all new. Again, here, I strongly support the 5th pillar, which you, Ambassador, have spoken about, and that is the question of results. And who else better than to show results? We already have the results of the BRI in front of us. So I wish you all well, but underlying governance is always the problem of corruption. So I'd really like to see the real strong action of identifying and finding out the people responsible and some retribution to take place. But with China's intervention and wisdom, perhaps that will also be done in the most judicious manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ji, sir. Up.
Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting set of discussions and policy expectations, but I beg to differ slightly. I don't think anything will happen. It's all about force. It's all about who controls the forces. And this has been true throughout history. 100 years ago, Arnold Toynbee wrote about it. Every time you want to come to some satisfactory conclusion or a peaceful thing, he says you can either have the Herodian way, say yes sir, or the Zealots way, fight. And what is happening right now is a transformation still continuing after the colonization or decolonization of the Second World War. But what I want to ask is this. Nothing has been suggested so far about any body which can take over from the UN. Is there a replacement for it? No. So how will it happen? Country to country, some countries with some other countries, groups and so on. So the UN General Assembly, which started off with the Second World War, Yalta, and who was it? Winston Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt. It was the American president. These 3 deciding on how to control the world, and this will happen. This will continue to happen. So what is important is that most countries and the regions in which they live should set up regional groups which can withstand pressures from abroad, from other places. This is the only way to bring about some measure of, let's say, peace and stability. And this will not happen otherwise, because the whole world is in distress. It's not just Pakistan or China. China has problems. Pakistan has problems. Japan has problems. The USA has problems. Higher education is in distress everywhere. So there's a major civilizational change taking place. Jobs. What kind of jobs? AI. Very nice. So very funny things are happening. And within that context, this global GGI is just a wish list. I'm sorry to say. Thank you.
Ji, sir.
Well, I'm afraid my question is maybe beyond the scope of this seminar, but since it has implications for South Asia, so I would venture to ask this. My question is that I think it was in May this year that the Western media had reported that Russian foreign minister had suggested the revival of what the Western media quoted as Russia, India, China, RIC, Troika. So, well, if it means Troika, it is beyond the economic pact like BRICS or SCO. We don't know what was the outcome of the meeting between Putin, Modi, and Xi, President Xi, in Shanghai, in China for the recent SCO meeting. But I just wanted to know what implications it would have for Pakistan and for South Asia if it comes to realization. Thank you.
Question 2. You're asking question from? You wish to some panelists to answer your question?
I think maybe some our Chinese colleagues, friends would like to answer on this.
Wong, Mr. Wong.
Well, actually, and I would like just to first give some remarks given by the suggestions from this gentleman. And of course, the real actions and sometimes to taking the actions by force is very important. But of course, whenever we come to implement something in real terms, it is important to raise the common ground and understandings so that everybody would have the same goal to fight with. So we first have to set the target and have the like-minded and also as well as stakeholders there to understand the meanings, the connotation as well as the purpose for fighting. Then we have the right to fight and we have the motivation to fight and we will have the collective implementations to fight. So of course, right now we talk about initiative. So these initiatives, when it comes to initiatives, the understanding of the vocabulary, it is for that purpose. So hopefully that is also some of the feedback to your questions. And of course, and everybody closely watch about some of the movement and interactions among the major powers, and SCO, of course, serves a good platforms. And I do not know whether that will happen sooner or later, but somehow, as you can see, I would not term it as something that is of expectations. And the impact for the Pakistan and the South Asia, so long as that we understand China is always as a trustworthy, time-tested partner and friend, and enjoys common values and also the good understandings among people to peoples, then there was nothing worried about because in essence, China always just stands and support Pakistan's unity as well as focusing on the economic development and to strengthen the overall national strengths. So I think the more that China enjoys its room for development and as well as vice versa to the Pakistan, I think is to the benefits of the two countries and also to the regions. So we should have full confidence and enough just positive expectation on that and try to bring the strategic balance for this subcontinent and so as to enjoy the more flexibilities among different mechanisms. As you can see that recently already Pakistan, China and Bangladesh have started the high-level dialogues and as well as the China, Afghanistan, Pakistan's trilateral informal meetings among the foreign ministers. So as you can see, so with this kind of the interactions, if for the good purpose and common understandings, then it will always create more room for cooperation and development, which would fundamentally to the benefit of each individual countries. So this is my answer.
Sir, with your permission, just one question for the panel.
Yes.
It is being proposed now that Gaza and Palestine, what will happen is Mr. Tony Blair will be heading the GITU, the initiative in Gaza, how to reform it and so on. This man, who is responsible for the war in Iraq, and when he was questioned in public in England, the inquiry took place, he said, for him it was a matter of faith. For him it was a matter of religious wars. I don't think we are anywhere near solving the Palestine crisis.
Sir, Ambassador Sul Mahmood.
Yeah, in response to some of the comments which have been made from the floor, I just want to underscore two things. One, in Pakistan, we deeply appreciate Chinese wisdom. And one of my favorite Chinese proverbs is that it is much better to light a candle than to curse darkness. And I think another candle has been lighted by President Xi Jinping. And we need to suspend disbelief and welcome a good idea. And we know that his earlier three initiatives have got great traction, and cumulatively, as I try to underscore, they present an alternative vision of how the world should be administered or governed, given the multifarious challenges and threats and threats that the world faces. So I think it is important to look at the totality of these four initiatives, see the tangible results already coming out of the earlier ones, and work together to ensure that GGI also, as an idea, is put into practice to the common good of most of the countries of the world. And second point that I want to underscore is uh, amplify what Councillor Wong said in his remarks. It is not necessary that every discourse is taken in a binary direction, and rather try to understand the Chinese logic. China has repeatedly said that these initiatives are towards the objective of creating a shared future for mankind, that they are not necessarily directed against one country or a set of countries. And the important thing that has been emphasized repeatedly over the last 2 years or so, when we have seen the intensification of major power contestation, that we need to remind all major powers of their responsibilities to resolve common challenges and find common solution. I think keeping the discourse in those confines or in those parameters would also be very constructive and forward looking. So I think we should keep these things in mind, and especially try and understand the Chinese rationale behind these initiatives and the impulse and the way forward that is being suggested by the Chinese leadership.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Shri Rame.
I just want to make two quick points. Number one, unfortunately, we are so used to the use of the power or the American style. So we use the lens to analyze every initiative with that. So because it's in our consciousness, so that we are used to living through it. So it is my proposition. It doesn't mean you agree to it. Second thing, I think Chinese initiatives, to understand Chinese initiative, there are two things we need to understand. Number one, international relation philosophy of China, which is entirely different from the Western ontology. In the Chinese ontology, they say it's a relation base, relation matters. But the West, this says it's interest matters. That's why there are no permanent friends and enemies. But Chinese say relation. Relation does not mean that you are not looking for the interest. It means your relation is not dictated by the interest only. It's dictated by relation, and then comes the interest. One thing, and second thing, which must we need understand in the modern era, President Xi Jinping thought on Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics. That provides the complete guideline what China want. I have recently written a paper on President Xi Jinping thought and identity mobilization era for China. I will share the link. You can read and we can discuss more. Anybody who want to read.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we are hard on time. So I would now request Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman Board of Governors of Institute of Strategic Studies, for a vote of thanks and concluding remarks. So you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chief guest, Mr. Murtaza Solanki, Mr. Inam ul Haq, former Foreign Minister of Pakistan, our dear brother from Bangladesh, General Fazlullah Akbar, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, ladies and gentlemen, peace and prosperity have been the common aspiration of humankind, mankind, always. On the other hand, conflict and wars have also been a reality. And over the millennia, some tentative steps were taken to organize the world in a way that people could live peacefully and enjoy development, prosperity. But the present order that was crafted after the World War II. Now, rightly, it emphasized three things: peace, development, and now a new emphasis on respect for human rights. Not only that only these ideas were propounded, but institutions were established. United Nations, as you know, have principal organs. So Economic and Social Council was established to regulate activities in the economic and social field. Human Rights Commission was established. Many legislative initiatives were undertaken. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, various conventions. So all these were good developments. And we know the UN played a very critical role in the decolonization process. That from original 50 members or so, now there are 193 member states of the UN, and most of them are former colonies. In the field of development, many initiatives were taken. New establishment of a new international economic order. Then Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, and so on. So it was not a barren era, Some really good progress took place. But unfortunately, particularly in recent times, that system is under now great erosion. It is falling apart. Now there can be two reactions. One is to just look at the things passively. And second is to then propose certain new initiatives, how to solve, how to address this challenge. And I think here comes the various initiatives which have been undertaken by President Xi. To address security issue, Global Security Initiative. To address the development side, Global Development Initiative. To promote peaceful coexistence and mutual understanding, Global Civilization Initiative. But all these things make any meaning only if you have a good governance system. And there comes the Global Governance Initiative now. The contours, the context, and the key elements of this GGI have already been amply explained by the other distinguished speakers. I need not repeat them. But they are the same
they stem from the UN Charter. The same sovereign equality, non-use of force, peaceful settlement of disputes. All those principles are the same. That's why, while proposing this governance initiative, it has been stated that it is not meant to subvert the UN system. It is rather to how to plug in the deficiencies in that system, how to further build upon that. And in that respect, many proposals concrete have been made, and hopefully things would, they will receive attention from the policymakers. And I'm very sanguine that all is not lost. The international community has struggled for so long to have peaceful world where there's a sovereign equality among states, and you could improve upon the UN system. So it has been a really very educative sitting, and there is a really hope for a better future based on sovereign equality of member states of the UN. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your concluding remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all the panelists who joined us here. I would also like to thank Dr. Lee, who joined us on Zoom from China. I would also like to express my gratitude to Mr. Musda Solanki, who came here as chief guest, and also Mr. Wang Shangji, who joined us as guest of honor. And thank you, all of you, that you joined us here for this event. Before this refreshment, I would just like to request all the panelists and chief guests for a group photo, along with members of China Pakistan Study Center.